in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Chip Nellinger. Chip is with Blue Reef Agri-Marketing out of Morton, Illinois, and this edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Dawson Tire and Wheel, your premier ag tire wheel provider in North America, helping people grow, and TractorZoom, delivering insights. The official work boot of Moving Iron Podcast is Dryshod Boots. Chip, how you doing today, bud?
Hey, doing well. How you doing, Casey?
Doing all right, man. It has been a crazy week to say the least. I mean, it's been watching these markets this week has been a roller coaster ride at best. Not much different than any other week, but this roller coaster ride's had a lot steeper drops and climbs than we've seen here in the past. So, I guess give me your recap of the week and what you think, and with the president coming out yesterday with the reopening guidelines from the CDC and the COVID-19 task force and what that looks like. Sounds like the country is going to get kind of a slow rolling start here, but there could be some good news for the markets here coming up next week.
It is, and I think that is good news. The stock market overnight it just closed kind of near unchanged. No big deal yesterday, but then after the close, we saw a report about a potential new drug that's had a lot of promise. The stock market shot higher, and then that was right ahead of President Trump's press conference where he announced hey, we're going to start kind of this rolling opening back up period here, possibly very soon for some states. And the market just rocketed higher. I'm talking, like stock futures, and even right now, as we're recording this, stock market futures are up about 670 points or so.
Oh, wow.
It has stabilized our grain markets a little bit. The negative here is that as we're talking right now, crude oil is making new lows, down $2.41 at $17.31 a barrel in front month crude oil futures. That would be, I don't know what that is, 14, 15-year lows, something like that. So that's the problem as it relates to corn especially, and the whole ethanol issue. So we're still going to be fighting that for a long, long time. Our, energy stocks, gasoline, diesel, and crude oil, just, I don't know how many days of supply we have out there. Getting people back on the road will help, but boy, we've got a big hurdle ahead of us on the corn side. With all that being said, there's a massive amount of bearishness built in here in our grain markets and livestock markets as well. And so, at a certain point, you bottom on the most bearish news, and then it's digested in the market. So we may be getting close to that. We'll have to see. There's also some talk and some hope that there's going to be some, support packages announced here. Secretary of Ag Perdue was talking yesterday, involve possibly the government, the USDA, the Commodity Credit Corporation arm of the USDA, physically buying maybe some proteins, maybe some milk. So they're I think strategizing behind the scenes about a possible support package, and that could give us, I'm not saying that's going to rally us, but at least give us some stability in these markets. But, there's still some problems out there. Number one being ethanol, number two being on the meat side of the equation, battling the virus at some of these packing plants and having packing plants closed, and we can't get all the animals, into the supply chain, and meat prices at the retail level going higher. And so that's not the situation that you want to have, but unfortunately it's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's a little crazy what's going on. You look at the amount of stuff that food, as far as the food supply chain goes, into the restaurants, and how much that affects the supply chain of animals going through butcher, or whether it's commodities or whatever it is, that vegetables and those kind of things. It is it's staggering to think about how much the food supply goes to restaurants after being through this shutdown here this last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It is scary. You read stories and see articles about vegetable farmers, plowing stuff under, lettuce and other vegetables just being plowed under. So it is a bad thing that's happening out there. There's no question about it. And at the same time, it's crazy where you literally have grocery stores where they don't have anything on the shelves as far as milk goes, and you got milk producers dumping it out in the fields. And same thing with the pork side. You see pork going higher in the store, yet producers are sitting there wondering, hey, I might have to destroy animals, literally destroy animals. So it's just everything's so interrelated now. There's going to be problems that last for weeks and months here that you can't even think about right now.
Right.
And one thing that I've started to pick up, I don't know how bad this will be, or if it's just maybe a timing issue, is access to liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
I've started to pick that up. That's a little bit of a problem. Number one, getting it in. Number two, getting it up the river. There's a lot of supply chain problems out there right now, and some of that stuff it's a timing thing. I don't know that it's not a shortage situation. It's just we can't get it where it needs to be in some of these cases, and if it does, that's something I'm really keeping an eye on. Is this nitrogen thing in certain areas? If that's like a timing thing. It's not like we'll just wait a couple months and then put the nitrogen on. You gotta apply that when you need to. So that is definitely on my radar screen. I'm not. Don't hear me wrong. I'm not trying to start fake news in here, but I've had at least one producer tell me, hey, this thing is a little bit different. We're having trouble getting liquid nitrogen in the quantities that we need right now. And so that's something to keep front and center, I guess, going forward the next few weeks.
Yep. All right, so export report came out yesterday, and they had some about the same numbers they had last week is what they're thinking. What's your reaction to that report, and what effect do you think it'll have on the market moving forward through next week?
Yeah, the big problem we have right now is bean exports. China just has not come back to the market, in a big way. In fact, they took a record amount of beans out of Brazil in the first quarter. And so our bean export numbers, I believe this week we're marketing year low. So the bean market's acting a little heavy, a little weak. We need the demand there. Now, all that being said, earlier this week we had a census crush report out, or I think it was NOPA crush, and it was a big number, way above the average estimate. And so domestically we're still have good demand for beans, but we need to get our exports up and running. This is the time of the year going forward that China starts becoming a bigger player typically in our beans. So if they're not going to be there for whatever reason, that's a real problem that's starting to brew on the bean side of the equation. Corn exports fell off a little bit last week, but they've been really good. Even pre-virus, corn exports were good. Obviously, we've gone a lot lower since then, and low prices are starting to stimulate some of that demand on the corn side. And so fortunately for many weeks running, corn exports have been really strong. Fell back a little bit this past week, but I think that might be just kind of a one-off type thing. So that's part of the equation is the demand side, and we're really struggling on the beans. Wheat hasn't been that great either. We missed out on some Egyptian business earlier this week, and the wheat market really has struggled in here. It's really had a poor 2.5-3 days of performance, way off the highs here, double-digit losses yesterday in the wheat. So in spite of some cold weather, I know at least in this part of the world, we're not a major wheat producer here in the Eastern Corn Belt, but Southern Illinois, Southern Indiana, there was some damage from that those cold temperatures we had 24 hours ago, and not picking that up really from out your way, in Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. It got cold, but I don't know that it did a lot of damage just yet. I haven't heard that anyway.
Yeah, we're moisture issues. What we're seeing right now, more than anything, our moisture in western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, and western Kansas to some extent. It seems like there is we need some water real bad, and this snow that we've got here this week, or last night and yesterday, probably put about an inch or so into the ground. So that's going to be a good deal. So we needed a little shot of water. All right. So that was my next question I was going to ask you about was the wheat when you started talking about that. There's a lot of news out there that should be somewhat supportive to the U.S. wheat crop, especially with Russia looking like they're going to kind of pull back on some exports. Ukraine is talking about planting less wheat and more corn. Australia has kind of snapped their drought down there, and they've had some planting kind of take off, but they've had so much water that they're kind of worried a little bit about what's going on there. So I guess we miss out on some Egyptian stuff like you talked about yesterday. But with the dryness in France and the issues that they're seeing in Eastern Europe as far as wheat goes, you would think there'd be some positive news for wheat, but I guess we're not seeing that.
Yeah, it's tough because there are some things out there that are supportive, like you said. Russia, Ukraine, France, and some dry weather in Ukraine as well. And so, but the backdrop is there's no shortage in the world. If you look at the world wheat carryout figures, they're still pretty ample, and the stocks to use is still pretty plentiful out there. So that's part of the issue why we can't get a bigger rally going. And the funds are already long, both Chicago and Kansas City wheat. So some of the bullishness is built in. That being said, we talked earlier, a little bit of this is a supply issue, right? So Russia's gone back and forth about, the last thing Russia wants is screaming higher, domestic wheat prices and flour prices. So they're very, very cognizant of that, and they don't want, any big food type shortages there. So they're fighting the virus, and they go back and forth with, are we going to export more or are we not? So there have been some mixed messages there and out of Ukraine as well. And so that certainly, if you get some news that, okay, we're done exporting from either Russia or Ukraine, or they put some restrictions on their exports, that thing, we will have another bull leg. But it's been very volatile in there, choppy trade and everything. And, I think that's going to continue into the future. And, I think one bright spot so far is maybe we're starting to, as we're recording this, we're talking about, our correlation to crude oil, and, corn opened up and we're a couple higher in spite of crude oil being, just getting pummeled in here. And so maybe we're starting to divorce ourselves a little bit. We'll have to see. It is Friday, and we've beaten this market up really badly in the case of corn and hogs, especially, and to a lesser extent cattle. But boy, it's been a rough road here the last couple of weeks in some of these markets.
Yeah, it has been, man. It's been a it's been a struggle to say the least, man. I've been watching. Just every day I get those reports on my phone through text messages, and I just shake your head a little bit to see what's going on. But it's there's a lot of things built into that based on what happens with the coronavirus and how we roll out of that and what that looks like. So knock on wood, things kind of start to roll out, and we'll start seeing some, planters are rolling and guys are out in the field working. So, things are bound to get better.
Let's hope so, Casey. It's been a long road for these farmers for going on 18 months now. So we need some better things, to happen.
That is for sure. All right, man. Well, Chip, tons of stuff going on. Plans are changed dramatically from what they originally started out with in January, December timeframe. So if folks are working on a plan or just need some help getting reorganized and redirected, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, best way is just give us a call at the office, 309-550-7213. I'd love to chat with you and just give you our opinion of what to expect going forward, and maybe just an extra set of eyes and ears to make sure you got the right plan out there. So we'd love to hear from you.
Right on. All right, Chip. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Have a great weekend.
All right, I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Also check out my website, movingironllc.com. I got a new blog post I'm going to post this weekend, so stay tuned for that. And then make sure you check out Global Ag Network and all the great podcasters out there as well. So till next time, I'm Casey Seymour with Chip Nellinger. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century.